Here's Lou. Good evening, everybody. Evidence of corruption within the Justice Department and the FBI mount, and more questions arise. The DOJ now says it's recovered 5 months of text messages that were missing. Those messages between anti-Trump FBI officials Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, lovers, it turns out. After all, the recovery of those texts required less than a week after officials claimed they had lost the messages and at one point seemed to be blaming Samsung. No more. We don't yet know who is to blame, but at least Samsung has been exonerated, as they say at DOJ. DOJ officials also trying to stop the release of that House Intel memo detailing surveillance abuses. The Department of Justice says that release would be extraordinarily reckless and seeks to block it. The Intelligence Committee, with the support of the White House, says the Justice Department can just stand down and relax, and continues to block DOJ and the FBI from seeing the House Intel blockbuster memo. Congressman Andy Biggs and Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton among our guests tonight. They join me to discuss corruption at the highest levels of the DOJ and the FBI. As the drama in the swamp rages on, President Trump high above it all, elbow to elbow with globalist elites meeting in Davos in the Swiss Alps. President Trump taking Davos by storm, arriving this morning, as you see there, on Marine One. He is the first sitting president to attend the annual gathering of CEOs, world leaders, globalists, and would-be elites in nearly 2 decades. The president greeted with a rock star reception from the business executives and world leaders as he's set to promote his America First message in a speech to the conference tomorrow.
There's been a lot of warmth, a lot of respect for our country, and a lot of money, billions and billions of dollars, is coming into the U.S., and people are very happy with what we've done, not only on the tax bill, but also cutting of regulations. And I think also being a cheerleader for our country. You know, if you're not a cheerleader for your company or for your country, no matter what happens, it's not going to work.
We'll take up the reception to the president's America First message with an audience of globalists and elitists. Dr. Sebastian Gorka joining us tonight. Our top story, those mysteriously lost and suddenly found messages between FBI lovers Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. The new exchanges simply adding to the picture of a corrupt and out-of-control FBI seemingly determined to protect Hillary Clinton and to undermine President Trump. Fox News Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge with our report.
Writing to the senior senators with oversight, the Justice Department Inspector General Michael E. Horowitz, who first discovered the anti-Trump texts between demoted FBI agent Peter Strzok and reassigned FBI lawyer Lisa Page, said a forensic review recovered records between December 2016 and May. The letter did not fully explain why senators were told in August the Inspector General had everything, only to learn last week that thousands of records were missing. Before traveling to Switzerland, during an impromptu discussion with reporters, the president chastised some media for avoiding the story.
I do worry when I look at all of the things that you people don't report about with what's happening. If you take a look at, the 5 months worth of missing texts, that's a lot of missing texts.
As the texts were apparently found, the political rhetoric over the 4-page memo documenting alleged government surveillance abuse took a new turn. With the House Intelligence Committee's Republican chairman, whose staff drafted the memo, traveling overseas, the ranking Democrat drafted his own version and took a swipe at the media who are covering the allegations.
They didn't care what was in the underlying documents. They wanted to make a political statement. They wanted to feed the beast on Fox News. They wanted to do what they could to derail the Mueller investigation.
A former FBI agent elected to the House as a Republican said the Democrats' national security concerns are overblown.
I've read the memo along with several of my colleagues. In my estimation, having had exposure and experience with both FISA and Title III wiretaps, that there are no law enforcement sensitive sources or methods that would be compromised here.
In a letter, the Justice Department expressed its own reservations, calling any release of the memo unprecedented and reckless. The FBI and Justice Department want a review before it goes public.
Let us see it first. At this point, nobody in the Senate or the White House or the Department of Justice or FBI has seen this document.
Though the senators can't read the document, the minority leader weighed in.
Today, it's this memo. On and on and on. Conspiracy theories with virtually no fact.
Some Republicans were pressed on the wisdom of releasing the memo.
When the public begins to question the integrity of the department and the FBI and conclude in the absence of other information that somehow politics has taken over rather than the law, that's a very serious matter, and we need to get that cleared up through one means or another.
The House Intelligence Committee would not comment on media reports the memo identifies Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, and the former FBI Director James Comey. Lou?
Catherine, thank you very much. Catherine Herridge reporting. House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes has denied Senate Intelligence Committee Chairman Senator Richard Burr's staff access to that classified memo. Only House members now can view the memorandum. My first guest tonight, part of a group of 65 lawmakers who are demanding its immediate release. He says nothing within that memo would impair national security. And joining us now, Congressman Andy Biggs, a member of the House Judiciary Committee. Congressman, good to see you tonight. And much has happened. And one of the most, one of the fastest recoveries of missing emails of that volume in the history of the digital universe. Unfortunately, it was the DOJ and FBI who had to do the scrambling. What do you make of it?
Well, it's a technological miracle, Lou, isn't it? I mean, what you have going on is a continued pattern of stonewalling and hiding the ball and not letting Congress get to the bottom of it, because the FBI and DOJ leaders, it's not the rank and file, we're talking the very top brass here, they want to keep this secret and under wraps because there's some damaging information, no doubt, in those text messages. There's going to continue to be revelations. This stuff has just been trickling out now for months. And the fact that they had the audacity to tell folks 6 months ago we couldn't find it, but now all of a sudden they have it. You know, the Inspector General's got to be pulling his hair out thinking about the deception that's going on there with upper levels of the FBI and DOJ, and it's undermining the rule of law in this country.
Yeah, Senator John Cornyn talking about the poor FBI and the poor Department of Justice having their integrity questioned. Are you kidding me? This is a U.S. senator watching everything run out before him, and he's worried about their feelings? This is mind-boggling.
Yeah, I don't understand that. I mean, these are long-term professionals. They have every capacity, they have every technology at their fingertips, and what we're seeing is not a willingness to cooperate with Congress, but instead a willingness to basically hide the ball. And it traces everything back, all the things that we've seen that have trickled out over the months. It's audacious for them to say, you know, how come you're disrespecting us?
And they sent out a flack today from the Department of Justice to respond to the national media. A flack. Not the Attorney General, not a Deputy Attorney General, not the Director of the FBI or Assistant Director. I mean, my God, how arrogant can they be?
Well, exactly right. I'm 100% agreement with you, Lou. I mean, we're talking, they want to see the memo first. Right? They say we shouldn't release the memo. I'm saying you need to release the memo because it isn't the memo that's going to undermine the integrity or the people's view of the integrity of these agencies. It's their conduct and action even now with these text messages. It really undermines their credibility at the highest levels.
And we want to turn very quickly, we've only got you here for a little while, and that is to the administration's four pillars, as they refer to it, of the border security and immigration reform. If we could, let's put that up. The White House releasing this today. It turns out to call for a 10 to 12-year path to citizenship for 1.8 million DACA recipients and other DACA eligible illegal immigrants with work and education requirements. That number would expand that up possibly to as many as 5 million people, by the way. We're not sure, but there's no numerical cap. And at 25, now you're ready for this? The wall has suddenly, Congressman, become a $25 billion trust fund. Not only for a wall, but for ports of entry and other expenses pertaining to border security. That's quite a metamorphosis, even by Washington standards. And to limit, not end, limit chain migration to the nuclear family, and, oh yes, end the visa lottery system. Your reaction, Congressman?
Well, when I first heard it, Lou, I actually said to myself, can this be true? This has got to be, somebody's punking me here. This just doesn't work. I mean, let's talk about the real pillars. The real pillars are the border wall. Let's put some pillars in there to create the border wall. Let's get the border secure, and then let's get the internal enforcement, and then let's remove the incentives to stay here. Oh, I don't know, like an amnesty program. An amnesty program provides incentives to come here. And as we've seen, there's been a surge and an uptick in unaccompanied minors and families crossing the border thinking that they're going to somehow get an amnesty or a DACA coming forward. This is, in my opinion, it's not what needs to be happening. I'm stunned by it, to be honest with you.
Well, I think a lot of people are. One expected some changes and some ambiguity, part of negotiating positions, but this is a four-legged monster that seems designed by the person who ran against the man we elected to the office, rather than something that he would conjure. Your final thoughts on that as we wrap up here?
Absolutely right. I've said there should be no DACA, no even discussion of DACA. Don't even consider it. I think these people are in the country illegally. We're putting them ahead of people who've done it the right way. That's a problem. We should not be doing anything until we've paid for, started, and completed that wall. And I'm not happy with the plan as presented.
No. And straightforwardly, I have said throughout, and for some 15 years, a little longer than that now, 16 years, that you cannot reform meaningfully immigration law if you cannot control your borders. Right. And there is nothing in this that suggests that we will or would. Congressman, thanks so much. Andy Biggs.
Good to be with you, Lou. Thanks.
See you. We're coming right back. Much more, much more. Straight ahead. Stay with us. Of text messages between two anti-Trump FBI lovers recovered less than a week after the DOJ claimed they were missing. Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton joins me to take up the crisis of confidence in both the FBI and the DOJ. Here next. And Iran slowing its ballistic missile program following the inauguration of Donald Trump. We'll have a full report here next. Stay with us. The House Intelligence Committee, responding to the Justice Department's expression of concern about the release of the committee's 4-page memo detailing FISA surveillance abuses, a spokesman for Chairman Devin Nunes says this, quote, agencies that are under investigation by congressional committees don't typically get access to the committee's investigative documents about them. And it is no surprise these agencies don't want the abuses we've found to be made public. Joining us tonight, Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton. Judicial Watch now suing the Department of Justice to retrieve the Strzok and Page FBI text. And first of all, it's great to see you. I have to give, I'm calling point blank Devin Nunes a hero in this episode. He is now doing so with great wit. I thought that response was absolutely perfect. What did you think?
I thought it was great, too, and the disturbing aspect of it is that the Justice Department is acting as if Hillary Clinton is president, as opposed to President Trump. You know, Jeff Sessions has put himself in a box because of the Russia recusal. And it seems Special Counsel Mueller is running the investigation, and all of this fight about the dossier, all of this back and forth about the FBI text messages and the modified limited hangout of text messages, it's about protecting Mueller's operation. And I think there's a race. There's a race for Mueller to interview Trump if he can, prior to his operation being blown apart by the release of this dossier memo by the House, or more text messages that will further expose the whole investigation into Trump and, frankly, into Hillary Clinton, which is related, as a partisan sham.
The missing text, why did they? I've never seen a recovery quite like this. Within less than a week of being told in a rather high and mighty fashion by the FBI director that the texts were lost, they have been found. It doesn't rise to the level of a miracle, perhaps a political miracle. But have you ever seen anything like this, and what do you suspect is at work here?
Well, I never thought they were missing to begin with, so it's no surprise they were found. I mean, they were found a few hours after we sued for them in federal court yesterday, which I thought was quite the late, I guess, a Christmas miracle a month late.
A suspicious conversion, I have to admit.
That's right. And, but we've seen this before. They told us Lois Lerner's emails over at the IRS. They had been missing or were lost. And we said, well, what about backup tapes? Well, there are no backup tapes. And then it turned out there were backup tapes. And, of course, most famously, Hillary Clinton had no emails. And it turned out she had 60,000 of them. And even the ones she deleted, we were able to uncover thanks to forcing the FBI to do a little bit of its job in 2016.
But no complete miracle at the State Department, where still there is an onerous burden that weighs upon those mighty servants of the American public, where they can only sort of send them out in dribbles for the great unwashed, that is, American citizens like you and me and those watching, so that we could at least comprehend the machinations of better minds and higher purposes than we serve.
That's right. The bureaucrats who are being enlisted, I think, thanks to pressure from President Trump to actually review these documents more quickly, are complaining that they have to do that type of work because it's beneath them. But the same is happening over at the Justice Department. There's a lack of transparency of this Justice Department that would have made the Obama Justice Department blush. And the deep state is in full control over there, thanks to the leadership just checking out on these transparency issues and refusing to be brave on these transparency issues. And that's why we're being we're told by the FBI, Lou, we've asked about these text messages. I can't tell you how contemptuous they were in response. And they essentially told us to sue us if you want them, which is what we happily did. But, we've had numerous lawsuits that they should have been turning these over to us. And they basically been giving us the back of the hand. And this is out of the new administration, not the Obama administration.
So let me ask you, that raises the question. Why, you must ask yourself this question, surely, why would not President Trump order these people, these servants of the American public, to act in his interest and release that to the American people, because it is our right to know?
I think he's receiving legal advice not to get involved. I don't know how else to explain it, because I think he does want this information released. He's been complaining about it separately through tweets and things like that. But it's one thing to complain about it via a tweet and get your lawyers and get the Justice Department to do what you want them to do. And I think he's been put in a box as a result of this illicit criminal investigation into him, that he can't talk about declassifying the dossier documents or the FISA warrants or the unmasking documents.
Well, perhaps he doesn't have to talk about it. I know this is a strange possibility to even imagine. But let's imagine that the president would not talk about it, but nonetheless his attorneys order, or he personally order, the attorney general, release the documents. Say to Rex Tillerson, release the documents, and let's end this nonsense and create the transparency the American people have a right to demand from their government.
I've told the White House directly that, and it just hasn't happened. I've called for, we talk about extreme vetting. I want extreme transparency in all of this. And to me, the Justice Department has ceded all of its authority on these issues to Robert Mueller. They cite his investigation to withhold information from us. Lord. And it's become King Mueller at the Justice Department. And he's just another lawyer working on a contract basis for the bureaucracy, but he's being treated as a king. And it's got to stop. It's got to stop. And Mueller's operation has been compromised, and this is why you have the secrecy.
It's right with compromise, corruption, political corruption, and conflict. It's that simple. Thank you, Tom Fitton, for keeping us, giving us your insight and keeping us up with the waves of the ebb and flow of this extraordinary drama. Tom Fitton, Judicial Watch. Be sure to vote in tonight's poll. The question is, do you believe the Dems leadership will soon be in a dark corner, whimpering as fear sets in as the midterms approach and their fate seems assured because of a very strong economy? Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Follow me on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Like me on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram at Lou Dobbs tonight. On Wall Street, stocks closing mixed. The Dow up 141 points. Not a bad rally. The S&P gained only 2, but both closed at, are you ready? All-time record highs. The Nasdaq down 4 points. Volume on the big board, 3.8 billion shares as volume continues to be brisk. And by the way, that's 10 records set so far this year, but we're only at January 25th, so it's not really too bad. A reminder to listen to my reports 3 times a day, coast to coast on the Salem Radio Network. Up next, new details on the White House immigration proposal. It may disappoint some of the president's supporters and the tens of millions who voted for him. And the Dems and Deep State scrambling to discredit the House Intel Committee's FISA memorandum before it's released. I'll take that up with Congressman Sean Duffy here next. Stay with us. We're coming right back. Who voted for and supported this president. It's going to be interesting to see the reaction. It calls for a 10 to 12 year path to citizenship for 1.8 million DACA recipients, and then things start slipping and sliding. And it says other DACA-eligible illegal immigrants with work and education requirements. And it gets even more complicated. What was once called a wall is now a $25 billion trust fund. However, that money intended apparently, we're not sure how much will actually be in that so-called trust fund, if ever any, but it's intended for the border wall, the ports of entry along the border, and all sorts of other expenses that may relate to border security. It gets complicated. And limits on family-based immigration to spouses and minors, that's usually called chain migration. It doesn't end it. It changes the definition, the tenure, and the outcome. The numbers get very slippery indeed again. And to end the visa lottery system, but not before doing an offset against, well, various other forms of immigration, including legal immigration. Joining us tonight is Congressman Sean Duffy, a member of the House Financial Services Committee. Congressman, great to see you, and congratulations
it's good to be with you, Lou.
On what has been a magnificent year for the Trump administration, the Republican Party, the House and the Senate, who have delivered for the American people. There have been times during the course of that first year that I didn't know if we'd be having a congratulatory discussion.
Lou, you're a little critical of us in the House, and you know what? Rightfully so. We weren't able to make a repeal and replace of Obamacare happen, but you know, at the end we came through with big tax reform, and we now see that rippling through the economy. People getting pay raises, bonuses, stock markets up. This has been fantastic for the American worker.
And it hasn't even really, the American worker, the middle class, small business, they really haven't felt, because the withholding period really hasn't kicked in. That'll happen next month, and then you're going to see tactile response from all of us who get a pay increase as a result of a cut in the pay to the federal government.
A little bump in our pay, that's right. But I also think, you know, we see the big news stories, you know, whether it's Home Depot or Verizon, right. Starbucks, they're all coming out with their bonuses. But in my own community, I'm in central Wisconsin here in Wausau, I've had a number of employers say, hey, listen, I'm going to add more money to my employees' 401ks because of tax reform. I'm going to bump up their salaries or give a little bonus. That's happening across even central and northern Wisconsin. And because they're smaller companies, that doesn't make the front page news stories. But it's happening not just at the big level, it's happening at the smaller levels in rural communities like the ones that I live in, all across America, which is pretty fantastic.
It's as you say, pretty fantastic, because in point of fact, most jobs are created in those smaller employers, not the larger. But thank goodness we got over 250 corporations now who have announced these bonuses and wage increases, and in many instances, stock as well. So it is having a wonderful effect, and that'll pay off in terms of investor confidence, consumer confidence, and make America great again. Let me ask you this. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, we already see that, though. In investor confidence and consumer confidence, those numbers are already up. And I look at Democrats who have bashed this tax bill. This was a tax scam, they say, or the bonuses of $1,000 or $2,000, or the pay increase a couple dollars an hour that people have gotten. They've called that crumbs. Well, Nancy Pelosi, I think she's worth $30 million. Well, $1,000 for someone who makes $30 million, yeah, not a big deal. But for a lot of people in my community, that's a huge deal in people's pocketbooks, and it just shows how out of touch Democrats are on what this does for the American people. And by the way, when they were in charge, they gave us Obamacare, which raised our health care premiums and took our doctors away. That's their perception of helping the American people out. Ours is actually putting money back in their pocketbooks. And
Congressman, I want to turn very quickly. We're out of time, but I want to turn to, first of all, the Intel memo. Do you think the president will approve its release right away, straight away?
I do. I think he has 5 days to object, so I think it's going to be released, and I think it's great for you to see it, Lou, and all your viewers.
All right. And the last thing, this rather stunning release of an immigration plan. A wall becomes a trust fund. We're looking at chain migration ending, but not long. It's a shift. It's this is quite, even by Washington standards, I think you'd agree, this is pretty slippery stuff, especially for a Donald Trump administration.
Right. We don't have all the details. It was my understanding that out of the $25 billion, $20 billion was going into a trust fund, so it couldn't be reclaimed by a future Congress, so Donald Trump could build a wall. Here's my concern about what we've heard about this deal. It only gets worse over time as Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi start to take bites out of it. Donald Trump should have gone further, had a harder position, because he's going to have to move on it. He's come too close to Democrats, and I think it's going to only end in a worse deal than what you've seen tonight.
Well, you fellows in the Republican conference need to get up there and have coffee with the man. Congressman, good to see you. All the best.
We're going to say it too, Lou. We're going to say you too. Have a good night.
You got it. We're coming right back with much more. Always good. Now a Fox Business national security strategist, and it is great to have you with us. Let's turn, if we may, to Dobbs, America First, and the president. He never ceases to amaze me with his both rhetorical flourishes and the effect he has on an audience. Selling America first in an audience of globalist elites, I think, is a pretty amazing feat that he's pulled off.
Yeah, it's truly remarkable, Lou. This is the heart of darkness for globalization. This is the elite of the elite, the individuals who think they know better than the actual voters that put them into their positions, and some of these mega wealthy people who, the richer they get, the more socialist they seem to get in their politics. And in goes Donald Trump with a very simple message. I'm here to tell you that America is back and national sovereignty is back. We don't have a closed economic system. Everybody's boat can rise. And if you want a slice of the pie, join our team. So it's classic Donald Trump.
And he's going to, next week, you have the State of the Union, as you well know.
Yes.
And the State of the Union may be defined in major part by the scandalous corruption at both the FBI and the Department of Justice. Your thoughts?
Yeah, this is personal to me, Lou. Before I came back in government, I spent 5 years working with the FBI, with law enforcement across the country, helping them understand the threat from ISIS, traveled to field offices and RAs across the country, and got to know these people. And these are patriots, the ground pounders, the agents, the analysts, and basically thousands of people who want to protect us, Lou, from the bad guys. My
complaints are not with the rank and file at all. It is with the absolutely rancid, corrupt leadership of both the department and the agency.
It's the seventh floor. It's the FBI seventh floor. It's individuals like Peter Strzok who think that they they get to decide who is prosecuted and who isn't prosecuted based upon their political preferences. Now we've got the text messages. Now we know. We see the paper trail of how Hillary Clinton was protected and how, if this memo comes out, and the GOP better release this memo, Donald Trump as a political candidate was targeted for political purposes by the intelligence community. That will make Watergate look like child's play.
And a presidency being subverted.
Yes, absolutely.
At the same time.
James Comey. Yes, I mean, James Comey as the director of the FBI, leaking materials to create an Office of Special Prosecutor so that his friend, Robert Mueller, can attack and undermine a serving president. It is truly outrageous.
Very quickly, the president, you've looked over, I'm sure, the immigration proposal that his chief of staff, John Kelly, took to Capitol Hill. This is not at all, not in any way, really, what he sold to the American voter.
Look, the deal hasn't been inked yet. The president has to go back to basics. I don't know whether Stephen Miller was allowed near this presentation, where this suggestion. There has to be a wall, not a trust fund, a physical wall. That's what has been promised. And also, as an immigrant to this country who had to wait 3 years to become a citizen, nobody gets citizenship if you came here illegally. You get to the back of the line, and maybe we'll let you have a work permit if you didn't break the law. If your parents broke the law by bringing you here.
Can you tell me what the calculus might be? Because this president is doing everything he said he would do. He is achieving more than any president since FDR. It is extraordinary, the trajectory that he set this country upon in a year.
Yes.
Why would he risk it all over this kind of proposal?
I don't think it's him. I find it hard to believe that this came from him, because look, what did he do in the matter of 2 days? He got Schumer to cave. He has the Dems over a barrel. Let's see what happens at the end of the day.
Sebastian Gorka, ever the optimist. Thanks for being with us. Good to see you.
You too.
Up next, desperate Dems in the left-wing media. They're predicting big midterm wins. Despite Trump's booming economy, extraordinary, historic first year in office, I'll have a few thoughts for them in my commentary next. And later, Byron York will join me to take up deep state subversion and the miraculous recovery of, well, politically miraculous recovery of those anti-Trump FBI lover texts. That really just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? Stay with us. We'll be right back. It was only a year ago that we could hear the Dems in the left wing squawking and squealing, furious that Donald Trump had won, had defeated Hillary Clinton, and made the elitist of the national left-wing media look like fools. They said he couldn't win the nomination, you may remember, and he trounced 16 Republican candidates and then her to boot. They say he'd never be elected. He beat her in the biggest political upset ever. And now those same self-proclaimed experts, savants all, are predicting a blue wave of Democratic wins in the midterms. Why? The pinhead pundits will tell it's only 2 presidents in the last century who've gained seats in both houses of Congress in the midterm cycle. As is often the case, those savants are forecasting the political outcome they want, just as the orthodoxy of daffodils declared the Trump presidency a disaster before it even began. Now they can't bear to acknowledge how wrong they were, how biased and blind they were to what is now an avalanche of evidence of prosperity, that President Trump's first year in office is now the most successful of any president since FDR. President Trump's economy growing at a rate of nearly 4% now. Nearly 2 million more Americans are working as the unemployment rate has plunged. Black unemployment at the lowest level ever. The same for women. The stock market has grown by $8 trillion in market cap since Election Day. Let me repeat that. $8 trillion. Taxes are going lower. And employers are handing out bigger bonuses and raises to their employees. Those workers will have more money in their pockets as a result. Their pockets, their wallets, their accounts, all of that begins next month. All thanks to the Trump tax reform and tax cuts. President Trump's approval rating just hit 45%. Can you imagine what it might be after next month? Perhaps in November, say on Election Day? No matter what nonsense the chattering class, the Dems, the left-wing national media would have you believe, please consider this. Americans like winning, and Republican representatives and senators who embrace the president and his America First agenda are the ones who will ride to victory on the building midterm wave election. That's right, I said wave election. I just put a different color on it. I can't wait. In part, I admit it's pettiness. It will be glorious to see the Dems, the rhinos, the national media elites squawking and squealing, just like they did a year ago. But in larger part, because the country will remain on a steady course to a brighter and more prosperous future. Our quotation of the evening from Thomas Paine. He said this: "The harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph." Can you imagine how President Trump feels tonight in Davos, Switzerland? Up next, the House Intelligence Committee blocking the Senate from viewing a scathing FISA memo. We'll take that up and more with Byron York right after the break. Stay with us. In our online poll last night, we asked, do you believe top officials at the FBI and Department of Justice have lost the trust of the American people? 96% of you answered in the affirmative. Joining us tonight is Byron York, chief political correspondent for the Washington Examiner, Fox Business contributor, and following this story of corruption and misdeeds at the FBI and the DOJ closely and constantly. Good to see you. Thanks, Lou. Let's start with the latest. The found text, missing now less than a week before they turned over. As Tom Fitton of Judicial Watch pointed out, within hours of their suing for those texts, they were found.
Well, how about that? I mean, who knew? I think the FBI must have been pretty surprised at the intensity of the reaction on Capitol Hill about this. You saw that within hours of this announcement that the texts were lost. The Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, said, we're going to do everything we can. We're going to use all of our technical measures to try to find it. And, well, they showed up pretty fast. Yeah,
it turns out to be less a matter of technological knowledge than alchemy between conscience and certain public reaction. Amongst these texts, one of these, a number of them catch my eye, but this between Page and Strzok, if we could put that up, referring to the next president, and here it is. One more thing, writes Page. She might be our next president. The last thing you need is going in there loaded for bear. You think she's going to remember or care that it was more DOJ than FBI? Strzok. Agreed. I called Bill and relayed what we discussed. He agrees. I will email you, and redacted the same. Your reaction to that?
Well, by the way, just so viewers know, the Bill referred to is thought by investigators to be Bill Priestap, who's a top FBI official, not Bill Clinton. Right. But look, Charles Grassley, Grassley, the senator, released that email today, or that text today, and said that it looks like they're pulling their punches in a Clinton investigation, and it certainly does. I mean, there are other parts in which they talk about getting a special counsel for the Clinton investigation, but in this one they made it seem like they really didn't want to go after her full bore, and of course we know they didn't.
We know they didn't. It's the evidence is mounting, and more evidence to come. But it is also, there is a reminder in this when we talk about the secret societies, as I did yesterday. Ron Johnson, the senator from Wisconsin, walked back his reference to secret societies, saying that it may have been that they were kidding rather than serious. That doesn't, however, go toward the idea that they were having secret society meetings off-site. So I'm not quite sure what to make of all of that. Are you?
No, there's a couple of things. Senator Johnson said he had an informant who told him they were meeting, some group were meeting off-site. Well, we need to learn more about that. On the secret society thing, on the night this came out, I think it was Monday night, I had talked to several lawmakers, and they only found those two words once and the context was very difficult to figure out. And I wrote that night, said, you know, this could be nothing. I think everybody got a little too excited about it and jumped the gun on that. But there's a lot of stuff in these texts that perhaps the lesson of the secret society thing is that you need to look for context. These texts are full of gossip. They're full of references to whatever conversation took place that day. They're hard to reconstruct, and in some of them there are very, very important messages. So that's going to take a while for investigators to go through. But then we have Adam Schiff saying, "Oh no, the American people are too stupid to understand them." And I think Adam Schiff is frankly such a partisan. There are all sorts of nouns I could use with that. Be careful, Lou.
Yeah, I'm not going to be careful. I'm going to be polite. The fact of the matter is that he is abjectly a partisan and not serving the nation at all. He's serving his party and his partners.